The rain was falling sideways against the glass windows of the 30th floor, the kind of storm that seemed to echo a man's breaking point. Inside, under the cold fluorescent lights of an empty boardroom, a CEO sat alone with a pen hovering above a stack of papers that would erase 22 years of his life's work. His trembling hand was just inches away from signing bankruptcy when a tiny voice, soft, innocent, impossibly out of place, floated into the room and said, "Sir, you missed this number. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the strange, beautiful ways life sometimes saves us right at the edge, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe." It helps stories like these reach more hearts. He had been sitting in that icy boardroom long before the storm rolled in, long before anyone else arrived that morning or planned to. His name was Cameron Halim, a man once celebrated for building one of the fastest-growing logistics startups in the region. People used to say his eyes carried a kind of ambitious fire, but lately, they held only the dim, exhausted flicker that comes from too many sleepless nights and too many dashed promises. For months, he had watched his company crumble piece by piece, delayed shipments, a miscalculated expansion, an investor who had backed out without warning, and the slow, suffocating collapse of trust. 22 years of dreams had come down to this moment, sitting in a boardroom littered with financial statements, resignation letters, and an untouched cup of cold coffee. He hadn't told his employees yet. How could he? They had families, loans, hopes pinned to the job he'd given them. He'd promised them growth, a future, stability. But now, all he could offer was uncertainty. He remembered the day he started this company in a single-room office with peeling wallpaper. He remembered how he used to eat instant noodles for dinner and sleep under his desk. He remembered the first time he received an investment, how he'd cried alone in a washroom stall because he finally felt seen, felt capable, felt like someone who could build something meaningful. And now, with every debt notice, every disappointed customer email, every investor questioning his ability, he had begun to feel like he was drowning. The kind of drowning where no amount of thrashing could save you because you were already too deep, too tired. As he sat there, the pen shaking in his grasp, thunder rumbled like the sky itself was mocking him. He blinked hard, fighting the burning behind his eyes. He reminded himself this was the responsible thing to do, the realistic thing. Signing bankruptcy wasn't defeat, it was closure. Or at least that's what he tried to convince himself while his heart cracked a little more with every second. He didn't hear the footsteps at first. They were too light, too soft, nearly lost beneath the pounding storm. When he finally did look up, expecting maybe the janitor or the building guard, he was startled to see a small girl, no older than 5, standing a few feet away. Her dress was pink with little stars embroidered on it. She held a crumpled piece of paper in one hand and a tiny, broken pencil in the other. Her shoes were soaked, her hair sticking to her forehead, and she had the earnest, wide-eyed look of a child who didn't yet understand boundaries or the gravity of the world around her. Cameron blinked again, wondering if the stress was finally making him hallucinate. How on earth had she gotten into the building? Into the boardroom? Into this private corner of his collapse? The security must have let the tenants' families inside because of the storm, he thought distantly, but none of that explained why she was standing here, staring at the documents he was about to sign. She pointed to the bankruptcy form, her tiny finger resting right above the column of calculations he had triple-checked that morning. "Sir," she said softly, "you missed this number." For a moment, he simply stared at her. Then he glanced down at the line she was pointing to. It was a small section, one he had skimmed over a dozen times. A column labeled, "Pending Receivables, Secondary Accounts." His mind was too exhausted to see clearly, but something about her insistence made him lean forward and squint. And then he saw it. A figure. A decimal point out of place. A number he had overlooked, one that changed the outcome more than he could have imagined in his exhausted, defeated state. 312 million rupees. For a split second, he thought it must be a mistake. There was no way. How could he have missed something so huge? But the more he scanned the sheets, tracing the connections between accounts, the more undeniable it became. It wasn't imaginary. It wasn't a typo. It was real. A partner company had delayed payment for 7 months due to a legal dispute that had recently been resolved. The funds had been released to his company's secondary account, but he'd been too buried under chaos to notice. And now, here it was, staring at him like an unexpected sunrise. 312 million. Enough to stabilize operations. Enough to pay off the urgent debts. Enough to keep salaries flowing. Enough to breathe. His hands went numb as he sat back slowly, staring at the forms, then at the child who had pointed it out with the casual certainty of someone pointing at a butterfly. He felt his throat tighten, his breath catch, something like hope clawing its way back into his chest. For the first time in months, the weight on his shoulders lifted, not completely, but enough to let air in. He asked her where her parents were, and she said her mother worked downstairs at the reception desk and had told her to wait on the couch. But she'd gotten bored, wandered off, and followed the sound of thunder upstairs. She said she liked numbers and puzzles and had seen him studying the papers, so she thought maybe she could help. It was such a simple explanation for such an extraordinary interruption, and the innocence of it all hit him like an emotional avalanche. He found himself laughing, not the bitter, exhausted laugh he'd grown used to, but something light, something unfamiliar. He thanked her, and she smiled, the kind of smile that reminded him of the first spark of possibility he once had when he started his company. For a moment, he saw himself in her, curious, hopeful, bold enough to step into rooms he wasn't supposed to and still believe he belonged there. Cameron rushed to his office, checked the accounts himself, checked again, called his finance head, and when the men confirmed the funds had indeed arrived, Cameron sank into his chair and felt tears slip down his cheeks, quiet, relieved, grateful tears. The storm outside still raged, but inside, for the first time in months, there was calm. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Debts were cleared. Operations steadied. Investors who had stepped back began to lean forward again. Employees who had feared the worst suddenly found hope in the air like a scent they hadn't smelled in a long time. And through all of it, Cameron kept thinking back to the little girl in the pink dress. He bought her a set of sketchbooks, math puzzles, and color pencils as a thank you gift. Her mother cried when he told her what her daughter had done, and Cameron realized then that sometimes, life saves you through the hands of someone who has no idea how powerful their small actions really are. Months later, at the company's big recovery meeting, Cameron shared the story, not as a dramatic speech but as a quiet reminder that sometimes help comes from the most unexpected places. People listened with softened hearts and watery eyes. More importantly, they listened with renewed faith. And in the background of all that recovery, all that healing, all that rebuilding, Cameron carried a new belief with him, that sometimes fate waits until the last possible second to give you a sign, but if you're willing to lift your head just a little, you might actually see it. If this story touched your heart even a little, please consider liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. It truly helps keep stories like these alive. Before the ending, take a second to drop a comment about the moment in the story that moved you most. Because in a world that often feels heavy, sometimes all it takes is one small voice, one child, one reminder, one missed number, to turn everything around.